Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. Today we're going to look into something that I don't do all that often, and it's throwing away items. We've all done it in series before, especially when you run out of room in your inventory. You're likely to just chuck some stuff on the ground and let it despawn for 5 minutes. But there are some occasions on which you'll find yourselves wandering back over those items, and it's kind of annoying when stuff pops back into your inventory when you wanted it gone permanently. So today, we're actually going to take a look at trash can designs, and they're called trash cans, but obviously there is no trash can item in Minecraft. This is more a term that players use for a redstone mechanism usually, which allows you to dispose of items permanently. And obviously this comes with a pretty big warning triangle attached to it saying, don't end up throwing away something that you will regret throwing away later. For example, a lot of people tend to throw away rotten flesh because you get so much of it from zombies, but then rotten flesh can also be traded with cleric villagers, so it sometimes makes a lot of sense to save it. I am a bit of a hoarder when it comes to Minecraft resources and any kind of items that you pick up in this game. I have extensive storage systems that I usually use to keep hold of all of the stuff that I collect throughout the series, and I've got chests and chests of mob drops and various other things that I can actually use for various purposes. There are very few absolutely useless items in Minecraft. But one of the things I want to talk about in a later episode this week is going to be experience farms that use furnaces, and a lot of the time that involves basically having a furnace churn through a bunch of items that you may or may not need. You're either going to be stockpiling a large amount of items, or in the case of cactus-based XP farms, you are probably going to be throwing a lot of those items away. And so for that, I figured it was worth starting out by doing an episode about trash cans and how to dispose of items safely. There are also ways that you can integrate trash cans and stuff like that into a design for a town. Say, for example, Founder's Forge here. In the real world, you'll find a lot of like public bins and stuff that are used by people to throw away their rubbish as they walk around a town. And Founder's Forge, you could imagine, if it wanted to make sure it was kind of free of litter, would have a few things like that out here. So one of the other designs we're going to look at is how to incorporate something like a trash can into a more civic setting. In the case of having a city that you can roam around and have a trash can that you could just throw items in, but that would actually then dispose of those items for you. It's kind of a neat idea for a city build like this, gives it a little bit of immersion and allows some practical features of it for the player. But we're going to start off by implementing a trash can design right here as part of my storage system. And of course, I want to make sure that that is completely separate from the majority of the storage system, both so it doesn't interfere with the redstone circuitry that's making sure all of the items get sorted properly down here, but also so I don't mistake the input chest for a chest that's going to help me store stuff and end up throwing away valuable resources. So what we're going to do is grab my redstone shulker box out of here, which should have most of the ingredients we will need. I'm going to grab a few trapped chests, which I made in a previous episode, and we're going to set up a trash can of sorts up here on this floor. If we knock through the floor here, you'll find that there is, there's a little bit of redstone down there that I never ended up using for the valuable resources down there, because those don't really need automatically sorting right now. But I think what we're going to do is build a trash can out the back here, in between these rows of chests which contain kind of old gear and items that I've gotten from loot chests and things like that, none of which I particularly want to throw away. So if I'm going up here, I will know that I'm either here to deposit something valuable, or I'm here to get rid of something that I don't want at all. So these two things are really not going to cross purposes all that much. So we're going to hollow out a space here. We've got a nice empty space behind this, and what we're going to do is set up a trash can back here that's going to be a one wide design. So it's going to be nice and easy for you to make in your world if you want to just get rid of a bunch of stuff, and it will fit in a fairly compact, if slightly longer, area. So let's take a look at how you can completely erase items from existence without having to just wait for them to despawn. There are a couple of methods of doing this, the most obvious one I suppose being lava. If you have a block of lava anywhere in the world and you've ever lost your items in lava or deliberately thrown stuff into lava, you will know that the stuff despawns basically instantly and there is no hope of getting it back. However, lava can be a little bit tricky to use in places, especially in worlds where you still have fire spread turned on. Now in this world I have fire tick off, so I don't have to worry about lava setting fire to my building here, but let's assume for a minute that I didn't have fire spread turned off, and let's take a look at one of the other methods of destroying items safely, which is cactus. Cactus will cause damage to us as a player if we end up walking into it, but it can also destroy items permanently. We will need a little bit of sand to put this cactus on, but we can use that for a very practical purpose, which is to dispose of items. As a quick example, let's plant the cactus right here, and let's dispose of, let's say, this other piece of sand, like so. There you go. Threw it into the cactus, and it has now completely disappeared. Same with this spruce trapdoor. Immediately disappears once it comes into contact with the cactus. Or maybe not immediately, but very, very quickly. There is very little chance of you retaining that item. Even if you're standing right next to the cactus, it pretty much takes damage immediately and gets destroyed. And if we want to, by the way, we can place a block over the top of the cactus to make sure that as a player we don't walk into it. You'll probably remember that placing a block to either side of the cactus will break the cactus, but placing a block on top is allowed. It stops the cactus from growing particularly high, and it also prevents players from walking into it. So now this can just be used as an item disposal. So what we want to do is have a dropper shooting items into the cactus from over here. The cactus is going to be sat there. We can have a hopper that's flush with the floor here, and then we can have a trapped chest on top of that. And if you've seen the 202 questions video, I will have covered trapped chests briefly then, but I'll explain once more now. The cool thing about trapped chests is that when you open them, they immediately send out a redstone signal. You might have heard the dropper clicking just then. And that actually locks the hopper that they are sat on top of. So when you put items into the chest, they don't immediately drain away into the hopper. And this can be a very useful mechanic to rely on for trash systems where, effectively, if you put something in there by mistake, say I was to put my diamond pickaxe in there with fortune, I would be able to remove that once I noticed I'd done it before I ended up closing the chest and allowing those items to leak through the hopper into the dropper below, and then from there get fired into the cactus. So it's a very neat thing to have trap chests around if you're working with these trash systems, because it can prevent you from throwing away something incredibly valuable by mistake. So I was going to have the cactus outside of the building, but then I realized if I put some redstone circuitry in here, it might end up interfering with this stuff, and I really don't want it to do that. So we're actually going to reverse the direction of this. We're going to have the dropper facing us this way, and we're going to place the cactus basically out here, and that should allow us to have it under the floorboards, obviously away from the player. We're going to need to place a block down there, like so. Having the cactus on this block here, kind of basically in front of the dropper, is going to allow us to put all the redstone outside the back of the building here, so we don't get too confused between the redstone happening for the dropper circuit and the redstone happening out here. So we can get out here, cover up the cactus like so, and then the dropper circuit is completely concealed. Now, we need a way to activate the dropper circuit, and for that, I'm going to be using a redstone clock that you've seen me build before in this series. We're going to be using a couple of observers, a sticky piston, and do a little bit of redstone wiring so that we can activate this thing manually, just so we have a second stage of security here. Aside from the trap chest feeding items into the dropper, we're going to enable the dropper clock manually to make sure that we are absolutely 100% sure we want to flush all of these items into a cactus before we remove them. So we'll want a lever on this wall here that's going to be activating the circuit from behind. We want a sticky piston down here that's going to be holding an observer in place. And of course we want the observers facing this way and this way so that they form a redstone clock, like so. And then every time this piston under here gets powered, it's going to push the observer up, and it's not going to be able to trigger the dropper. This also powers the dropper, which might potentially lock the hopper for a second or two, but you'll notice when we have the chest open like that, the observer clock isn't ticking over, so we could potentially disable it that way. I'm going to disable it using the lever as well, just to be doubly sure. And also because having this ticking noise while I'm working on my storage system would absolutely drive me mad. So we're going to break down these dark oak logs here so that they are planks. We're going to set up a nice easy redstone circuit so that we have a repeater facing into the back of this observer here, and that's actually going to power the piston back here like so. And then that's going to prevent the thing from ticking constantly while we have items loading in here. So if I put, for example, let's say this gravel that I picked up from the back of the room here, once I close the trap chest, that's all going to flood down into the dropper there, and if I was to activate this system, it would activate this observer clock. All of the items in the dropper would be spat out into the cactus. And with the wall all closed up, that's a nice discrete trash system. It's quite clearly here so that we won't end up throwing stuff into it by mistake, but we've got a trap chest here to put stuff in, we've got a lever to activate it, and everything should be just fine. Now let's go and grab some resources that we can actually test this on, and I'm thinking what we'll do this with is cactus green dye, for example, because the irony of throwing cactus into cactus is pretty funny, but also because it's something we have been farming constantly from the beginning of this series. It's something that we don't really use a whole lot of, except when I need to dye something green or cyan, which is rarely. And also, so we get used to trashing cactus, because one of the easiest things to make a furnace-based XP farm out of is a cactus farm that farms cactus nice and quickly, and just have that go through a furnace constantly. But that also provides you with a ton of cactus green you don't really want, and so you're probably going to have to incorporate a trash circuit into this in order to get rid of it. But here we go. Like I said before, I could place a bunch of this green dye, our test items, into the trap chest. It's not going to go anywhere until I close the chest, at which point if we right click on this hopper, you can see that it's flowing through the hopper. If I open the chest again, it's already got rid of a whole bunch of them. And of course you could have the chest drain faster by incorporating a hopper minecart into this or something like that. But for now, all we need to do is enable the circuit like so. And if we open this up, you will see that the cactus green is all being thrown into that cactus and is immediately despawning. The blocks around the outside are making sure that none of it flows to the left or the right. And eventually, this observer clock is actually too fast for it to keep up with the flow of items through the hopper. So you'll get that tick-tock sound where the dispenser is both dispensing an item and then failing to dispense an item because one isn't ready in the dropper yet. But eventually, all of the items will flow through this circuit. You can disable it once again temporarily by opening the trap chest, and then you can set it going again, and you'll find it just getting rid of all of the items nice and easily. I'm going to shut that off for now, though, because I don't really feel like wasting absolutely all the items here. And another cool aspect of this system is if any items did get stuck in that dropper, opening the trap chest will actually fire the dispenser one more time, making sure that it clears out anything that's already in the system. Not that the clock here isn't going to do that anyway. So that right there is trash can design number 1. Nice and simple to use, a very discreet one-wide design with a fail-safe or two to make sure that you don't throw away important items. I think that circuit works really well. But next, we can take a look at a trash can design that works a little bit more automatically. Hey folks, welcome back. So right here we're back at the Ender, which as you can see is producing a whole lot of Endermen right now and has been producing a whole lot of Ender Pearls. So rather than install a more complicated redstone mechanism here, because I know that the only stuff coming up this water stream is going to be Ender Pearls, of which I have a vast amount at this point, more than I think I will ever really need. And of course if I need any more I can come back here and get more. The excess is always just going to end up going into this cactus over here. And once again I have a system in place down here. Hello, chicken. I have a system in place down here that just pumps all of the ender pearls up to the surface, and once that last hopper fills up, as you can see, we get a few of them floating over the hoppers already and directly into that cactus where they are destroyed, meaning that eventually we can completely flush out the system, which has been completely full of ender pearls since day one. Of course, some people don't even bother with a system like this in their ender because you have the void, and tossing items into the void is effectively the same as using a trash can on them. The cactus will destroy the items a little bit quicker, but it really doesn't make all that much difference, and there are going to be a lot more ender pearls here than even some folks on a server might need. But in situations like the witch farm here, for example, there might be an occasion on which I want a manual trash system, like, for example, if I want to get rid of all of these spider eyes, and I'm fairly confident that I will want to get rid of all of these spider eyes at some point. So what I'm going to do is create a little manual trash system here with a hopper that I can just throw items into on the side here if I really need to get rid of them. This time, however, we're going to have the dropper facing down on top of the cactus and surrounded by blocks of glass, meaning that no items are going to be able to escape in any direction. All of the items shot out of the dropper are just going to end up on top of the cactus and they'll get destroyed instantly. At this point, all we need to do is set up a pretty standard automatic comparator clock here, which is going to pulse this dropper anytime it's got any items in it. For example, now, if I pop that in there, it's going to immediately start ejecting the ender pearls I just collected onto the cactus, where they're going to be destroyed instantly. And we can do the same with the spider eyes here if we want to, making sure that all of these spider eyes end up getting flushed out of the hopper at a slower pace. Come to think of it, we don't even really need to have the hopper on top of here. All we need to do is apply the items directly into the inventory of the dropper and it will have much the same effect. So the advantage of a system like this is that it's automatic, meaning any items that you end up being put in the dropper will automatically get flushed away. You can use a trap chest if you want an extra layer of security, but once again, bear in mind, if you put any valuable items in there, they're going to get instantly flushed out into the cactus and get destroyed. So be very careful around these ones. But of course, in circumstances like if you're building a trash system in the nether at your zombie pigman farm, for example, to get rid of all of those trashy pieces of rotten flesh that you don't want to trade away, then having a system like this in place means that you don't have to rely on water streams like we did with that ender pearl farm in the end. Also means you can hook it up to a system of hoppers like this nice and easily and make sure that all of the items get disposed of if you have any kind of overflow problem with your storage system if you've made a really efficient farm. For our final design here, we're back in Founder's Forge, and what I want to do is set up a trash can here on this spot that actually looks like a city trash can. And we've actually got a couple of options we can use here, but first of all, we need to make sure we dig out the area for the trash can itself to go. For this design, I actually want the dropper and the cactus to be pretty low down. We need basically kind of 6 blocks worth of room here because the dropper is going to be facing down here, and of course the cactus needs a block of sand to stand on there, and then the cactus is going to be a block above that. So I'm running out of space in my inventory here, breaking out the blocks either side. The cactus is going to go there, and then we can build up a little bit around the outside here, making sure that the cactus has plenty of room around it, and then we can block the rest of this in. So that cactus is now completely isolated in there, but is going to be able to destroy any items that go into this dropper. And we're going to make the same dropper clock design again. It's nice and simple, nice and straightforward. Couple of redstone components involved, but nothing too complicated. So that's all set up. Comparator, repeater, bunch of redstone dust powering the dropper. Now if we throw some more ender pearls in there, everything's getting spat out into the cactus and is being destroyed. Taking care, of course, not to cut off this redstone circuit, we're actually going to fill in the rest of the environment there just to make sure that that's nice and enclosed. And now what we're going to do is place a hopper going into the dropper like so, and we're going to put a hopper minecart on top of that like this with rail there and a hopper minecart, and that's actually going to stay there. We're not going to break the rail, we're just going to leave it as is right now, because on top of that we can place either a cauldron, which looks pretty much like a trash can, and with the hopper minecart underneath it looks like it will have some sort of kind of transport system. You could always, of course, use a piston to push a block over into that, and then anything that gets chucked in here will still end up going into the hopper minecart, and then after that it will get fed into the dropper, which, as you heard just then, dropped the item out into the cactus. And I was thinking that the other item we could maybe use was a composter, but I chucked some ender pearls in and they don't really seem to be going through. So maybe the base of the composter is a little thicker than I originally gave it credit for, and your hopper minecart might even need to be on a half slab or something if you wanted to have the hopper minecart stick up through the bottom of the composter and still transfer items down through to that hopper. And I'm not certain that the hopper would pull anything out of the hopper minecart in those circumstances. So yep, looks like we just lost that composter. Never mind, I'm gonna have to go back to using a cauldron there. But I like this as a trash can design. You can simply throw items into it and they will disappear, and if you want to make sure that you don't do that by accident, you can always put a trapdoor over the top, and the trapdoor, of course, if it's closed, will prevent stuff from going into the bottom of the cauldron and getting caught in there. Of course, if you want to open the trapdoor at that point, you will end up with all of the items going in. So this actually feels a little bit more like a city trash can that you might use. I like that design, and I think maybe we'll place a few more of these around Founder's Forge, although I'll have to be pretty careful about throwing items on the ground near them just in case they get caught up in that hopper minecart. But with the cauldron on top, it's pretty safe. It shouldn't really be a problem if you throw stuff on the ground next to that, because you should be able to just throw them into the bottom of the cauldron, and that's the only area that will accept items being thrown in. Naturally, if you want to disguise the fact that the hopper minecart is sat under there, if that's a little bit too obvious to you, you could always have trapdoors going up around the outside as well, maybe spruce trapdoors, and have the cauldron still open at the top, but have spruce trapdoors on the outsides to block the fact that you can see underneath the legs of the cauldron. But all in all, I think that's a pretty neat little design, and hopefully you guys, if you are thinking about building a trash can in your world, will try out a couple of these designs and see which one suits you best. But that is going to be it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Thank you so much for watching. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.